Deteriorating between China and the United States, with Beijing declaring it's prepared to go to war with America.
China's Xi Jinping says his country is ready for trade, tariff, or any kind of war until the very end.
Something is brewing in Beijing, and it's sending a message the U.S. can't ignore. While the world's attention is scattered across conflicts, economic turbulence, and shifting alliances, China has been quietly making plans that could reshape the world's balance of power. And this time, it's about preparing for a future where it stands unshaken, no matter what challenges come its way. Behind closed doors, key players in China have been laying the groundwork for something bigger, and the focus is on strengthening China's technological edge. While some see this as a necessary push for economic stability, others are raising eyebrows. Is China positioning itself for an economic comeback, or is it sending a warning shot to those who might try to stand in its way? Let's break it all down in this video. China's biggest political event of the year just wrapped up. And if there's one thing to take away from it, it's this. Beijing is making sure it dominates the global stage. At the annual Two Sessions gathering that was held from March 4th to 11th, China's top officials laid out their vision for the future. And it's one that could send surprise international markets, especially in Washington. Premier Li Qiang took the stage with a bold economic plan, setting a growth target of around 5% for the year. That number might not seem aggressive, but it's part of China's long-term goal to double its economy by 2035. Western analysts, however, aren't buying the optimism, projecting a lower 4.5 to 4.6% growth due to weak domestic demand and escalating trade tensions with the US. But Beijing isn't leaving anything to chance. It's pumping money into the system, increasing government spending, raising the deficit to GDP ratio to 4%, and issuing more special bonds to keep the economy moving. And if necessary, they're prepared to throw even more cash at the problem. This level of economic maneuvering is a direct challenge to US dominance. One of China's biggest concerns is also getting its people to spend more. Consumer confidence has been shaky, and retail growth slowed to just 3.5% last year, a worrying sign for a country trying to pivot toward a consumption-driven economy. To fix this, Beijing is rolling out a mix of incentives, including wage increases, job creation, and cutting financial burdens for households. They're also doubling down, literally, on trade-in programs, with funding jumping to 300 billion renminbi to encourage spending on cars, appliances, and other big-ticket items. The tourism and service sectors are also getting a boost. While early signs suggest last year's efforts worked, Beijing isn't taking any chances. A larger plan is in the works to fully revive consumer spending, something the US should be watching closely, because a stronger Chinese market means tougher global competition. But the real headline grabber is China's relentless push for technological dominance. At the Two Sessions, Beijing made it crystal clear that high-tech innovation is the backbone of its long-term strategy. It's pouring resources into next-gen industries like quantum computing, biomanufacturing, 6G telecommunications, and artificial intelligence. And it's not just relying on state-driven efforts. Private companies are expected to lead the charge, with government support behind them. President Xi himself met with top business leaders, signaling that China is backing its tech giants in a big way. To supercharge the effort, Beijing is launching a massive 1 trillion yuan venture capital fund, specifically designed to fuel high-growth startups. At the same time, the AI Plus initiative is being rolled out to integrate artificial intelligence across industries, further solidifying China's grip on the tech sector. China is also gearing up to protect its exporters as global trade tensions heat up. With exports playing a key role in the country's economy last year, officials are now bracing for a tougher road ahead, thanks in part to new US tariffs under President Trump. Commerce Minister Wang didn't sugarcoat the situation, warning that foreign trade conditions were set to get even more challenging. In response, Beijing, at the Two Sessions, rolled out a plan to cushion the blow, expanding export credit insurance, improving financial services for businesses, and pushing cross-border e-commerce. The strategy also includes diversifying trade partnerships and securing new agreements to keep China's exports moving. Meanwhile, the country is also tackling issues in major industries like steel, electric vehicles, and solar energy, promising to cut excess production and stabilize pricing. Beyond trade, China is doubling down on efforts to bring in foreign investors, especially those already operating in the country. With foreign direct investment plunging 27% last year, the government is scrambling to reverse the trend. The plan is to expand free trade zones, ensure equal opportunities for foreign businesses, and offer better incentives for reinvestment. Officials are positioning the Hainan Free Trade Port as a key economic hub, while zeroing in on high-growth sectors like telecommunications, healthcare, and internet services. To sweeten the deal, China is also revamping visa policies and improving support for international professionals, hoping to make the country a more attractive destination for global talent. On the diplomatic front, China is sending a clear message. It wants to be seen as a force for stability, but won't sit back if trade barriers keep piling up. Speaking at the two sessions, Foreign Minister Wang Yi took a swipe at what he called profit-driven major powers, an unmistakable jab at the U.S. He made it clear that if Washington continued its tariff war and fentanyl accusations, Beijing would hit back with its own countermeasures. However, his tone toward the European Union was notably softer. Instead of confrontation, he signaled an interest in strengthening ties, suggesting that China sees an opportunity to pull closer to the EU at a time when its relationship with the US is growing more strained. With China being serious about its ambitions and the US growing increasingly uneasy, this isn't the first time Beijing has made strategic moves to undermine Washington's influence. In February, Chinese authorities quietly tightened their grip on the country's top artificial intelligence experts, discouraging them from traveling to the United States. Officials feared that AI researchers and tech entrepreneurs could unintentionally leak sensitive information about China's rapid advancements in the field, or worse, become bargaining chips in escalating US-China tensions. The paranoia wasn't unfounded. The detainment of Huawei's CFO in Canada at Washington's request during the first Trump administration remained a fresh memory for Beijing, and they weren't taking any chances. With the global AI race intensifying, China is positioning itself as a major competitor to the US. A prime example is DeepSeek, a Chinese startup that claims its AI models can match or even surpass those developed by US industry leaders like OpenAI and Google, all at a fraction of the cost. The stakes are high, and the Chinese government isn't about to let its brightest minds risk exposure. President Xi Jinping has been vocal about the need to strengthen national security, specifically in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Speaking at a Politburo meeting, he emphasized the importance of safeguarding China's technological progress, making it clear that political security must be the top priority. To reinforce control, Chinese executives who do travel abroad must now report their plans before leaving and debrief authorities upon their return. Some have opted to cancel their trips altogether. DeepSeek's founder, Liang Wenfeng, declined an invitation to an AI summit in Paris earlier this year, while another prominent AI entrepreneur scrapped a planned visit to the US last year after receiving instructions from Beijing. But Donald Trump has no intention of sitting back while China expands its influence, especially not when it comes to one of the most strategically vital waterways in the world. On March 14th, the US president ordered military officials to draft plans for what he called reclaiming the Panama Canal, a move that has left many scrambling to decipher what exactly that means. According to two US officials, Trump's administration is pushing ahead with the strategy, though there's no clarity yet on whether this will involve military action, economic maneuvers, or diplomatic pressure. Ahead of his inauguration in January, Trump refused to rule out the use of force at the canal, which connects the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Now, U.S. Southern Command is actively exploring options, ranging from military partnerships with Panama's forces to a full-scale American takeover, though officials admit that an invasion remains an unlikely course of action. The primary concern driving this move is China's growing foothold in the region. Trump has claimed that Chinese-backed ports now control both ends of the 50-mile-long canal, presenting a direct threat to U.S. national security. His administration fears that Beijing could leverage its influence over the passageway to disrupt American trade or use it as a pressure point in the ongoing economic standoff between the two superpowers. Despite these concerns, both Panama and China have denied any foreign interference in the canal's operations. Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino has insisted that his government alone manages the waterway and dismissed the idea that it's in the process of being reclaimed. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Lin Jian, accused the U.S. of using coercion to pressure Panama into cutting economic ties with Beijing. Lin reiterated that China has never managed or interfered with the canal and fully supports its neutral status under international law. Behind the scenes, Washington is already ramping up its presence. The U.S. military currently has about 200 troops stationed in the region, including special forces, but Trump wants to be ready for any potential escalation. Plans being considered include securing U.S. shipping routes, increasing military patrols, and potentially restoring American control over key ports and canal operations. Former U.S. Southern Command leader, General Laura Richardson, had previously raised alarms about China's activities near the canal, warning that many of its so-called development projects could be repurposed for military use. She pointed out that Beijing's state-owned enterprises continue to bid on infrastructure projects in Panama, raising concerns that China could turn them into strategic naval strongholds for its military in the future. In response, Trump has already begun working on an economic counterstrike. This month, he announced that a major American corporation is purchasing ports around the canal in an effort to curb China's influence. Declaring that the U.S. never intended to hand control over to China, Trump made his stance clear. "We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back." For now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is set to review the military proposals in the coming days before heading to Panama next month. While a direct military intervention remains unlikely, Trump's message is unmistakable. China's growing influence over the canal is a red line, and the U.S. is preparing to take action one way or another. Based on what experts have said, China is carefully watching the cracks forming in Western alliances, waiting for the perfect moment to make its move on Taiwan. The shifting global landscape, particularly the unpredictability of U.S. foreign policy under Donald Trump, has created an opening that Beijing could exploit. Trump has made it clear that the U.S. will no longer serve as a security blanket for its European allies, forcing them to scramble for alternative defense strategies. This change has left Chinese President Xi Jinping in an advantageous position as he sees a divided West and a U.S. that appears increasingly uninterested in its traditional security commitments. Experts suggest that if conditions continue to shift in China's favor, it may see an opportunity to strike Taiwan, an ambition Xi has long held as his ultimate political goal. According to Professor Kerry Brown from King's College London, Beijing is unlikely to act unless it is backed into a corner. However, certain events, such as Taiwan formally declaring independence or the U.S. officially recognizing it as a sovereign state, could force China's hand. Meanwhile, signs of preparation for a potential invasion are already emerging. Recent satellite images and military sources indicate that China is constructing at least 5 enormous troop-carrying barges, each capable of transporting fleets of tanks and the 1.2 million troops it would need for a full-scale assault on Taiwan. Additionally, Beijing is working on its largest aircraft carrier to date, designed to launch multiple fighter jets simultaneously from 4 separate runways. These developments suggest that China is laying the groundwork for a major amphibious operation, a type of military maneuver that hasn't been attempted on this scale since the D-Day landings in World War II. The situation is further complicated by China's escalating military presence around Taiwan. Over the past few years, Chinese forces have ramped up activity in the region, regularly encircling the island with warships and fighter jets. In October, Beijing conducted near-daily military drills in Taiwan's air and maritime space, reinforcing its show of force. Xi has made his stance on Taiwan clear. In his New Year's address, he described the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait as one family and dismissed the idea of Taiwanese independence as a lost cause. He has consistently framed Taiwan's eventual reunification with China as an unavoidable historical reality. For decades, Taiwan's security has been underpinned by U.S. military support, but that once reliable backing is now in question. Trump's mixed messages on whether the U.S. will continue to stand by Taiwan have sent surprise through the island's leadership, raising fears that Beijing may see this as the right moment to take decisive action. China's military production is also surging, and with Trump pulling back support for Ukraine, Beijing seems to be taking full advantage, ramping up its own preparations while the West scrambles to adapt. But that's not all. China has also been stockpiling gold at record levels. While it's not unusual for Beijing to hoard precious metals, the sheer scale of its recent purchases has raised speculation. Some experts suggest this is a calculated move to cushion itself from Western sanctions, in case it tries to invade Taiwan. Whatever China is planning, one thing is clear: it's getting ready for something big.